Have you ever found yourself in between having obeyed God and your promised land? Have you begun to second guess yourself, wondering what's happening, wondering how come you're not seeing the promise yet? Then this video is going to be for you. I want to share with you three reminders for those times in which you find yourself between having taken a step of faith and not seeing what God has promised you yet. I've been reflecting a lot the last few days about the story of Joshua and how Joshua had to step into leadership after Moses had passed. And if you look at Joshua chapter 1, you find the words of the Lord to him. The Lord asked him to be strong and very courageous because he was to lead the people of Israel, the entire nation, to the land that God had promised for them. So it's fascinating how Joshua get to the point in chapter 3 in which he eventually has the opportunity to obey God and to get to a place where actually the Lord himself tells him that that day in which they were getting ready to cross the river Jordan, the people were going to see that he was with him. And it's so marvelous to see how this one side of obedience doesn't look like taking a step out of a boat like Peter had to do it, or maybe raise a staff like Moses did it, leading the whole nation to cross the river, to cross the Red Sea. But now Joshua is more like we've taken a step of faith. We know where we're heading. We know what God has said. We know what He has promised, but we haven't seen it yet. So now we find ourselves standing in the middle, in between a step of faith and the promised land, that which God has said that belongs to you. So there's three reminders that I want to share with you that I've been meditating on this week. Is here is what I find myself, and I said, well, I think this might resonate with someone who is watching our videos or someone who is part of our live gatherings, Faith Collective on Sundays here on YouTube. But whatever you find yourself, hopefully any of these reminders they could resonate and you could take something from them. So first, I would love to just read to you quickly the scriptures here, and it's Joshua chapter 3, and I want to read verses 15 through 17. And it says, now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carry the ark reach the Jordan and their feet touch a water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap at a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Sarathan, while the water flowing down to the Sea of the Arab, the Salt Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. This is so amazing. It's so beautiful to watch and to read such a miracle from God and to get to understand a few things that are just to me highlighted from this story. First, the first reminder is that if you look at the life of Joshua and you realize where he found himself, he got to a place in which now obedience looked different for him. Obedience requires something different. And you see it in the action that the priests took when they got in the middle of the river. The Bible says that they stood with the ark. Obedience, first reminder, often looks like a posture, like an attitude of the heart, and it requires standing. Here, it didn't require stepping out, it required standing. Standing in the middle of the river. And it's so fascinating to me how many times in our lives we could take a step of faith, boldly take a wild step of faith, heading towards the promised land, but yet the space in between, we could easily get discouraged. We could easily begin to second guess ourselves. Did I really obey God? Was God really on this? Was truly God the one talking to me? Or did I miss the Lord? And we begin to go down that spiral that at the end of the day is not leading anywhere good, because what I've understood and what I find myself is that the moment I take a step of faith, I know that is going to require more than a step to actually see what God has promised. And often, what is required is an attitude of the heart, is a posture of standing in the middle of that river, like you see the priest did. They stood in the middle of the river holding the ark, while the people, the entire nation, got to cross through the river. Maybe you find yourself at a difficult place now where you have obeyed God and you say, Frank, but it doesn't look like the promised land here. It doesn't look like what the Lord said I was going to experience. What's going on? That is the in between. That is the in between, a place that so easily people get discouraged, people throw the towel, people give up on their journeys because it doesn't look like they were expecting. But my friend, my 2 cents today is that obedience at times it looks like standing still, standing firm, staying put. It's required. The second thing, the second reminder, it really caught my attention as I was meditating on these verses and sharing them with a couple of friends this week. It also uh, I was just enlightened by the fact that God often he leads with presence. He doesn't lead with pressure. He leads with presence. And if you realize, while the people were crossing, the priests were holding the ark. And the ark of the covenant meant the presence of God. They were holding that ark. And it's beautiful to know how God leads with presence and not with pressure. He told David, if you read the Psalms, he said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I know that you're there with me. In the middle of the valley, in the in between, in the moment of uncertainty, in the moment of anxiety, he is there with you. He's there with you, my friend. And as you watch this could be a great reminder that God doesn't lead with pressure. God doesn't lead with anxiety, with urgency. God leads with presence. And it's so wonderful to read the story and how it says that as they stood there holding the ark, embracing God's presence, treasuring his presence, then the whole entire nation got to cross. So many times in my life where I have I have felt pressure from 1,000 different places, different directions, but I've honed in the presence of God. I fixed my eyes on the Lord. I have chosen not to make a decision. I've made a decision not to look at the waves, not to look at the storm, but to fix my eyes on Jesus. Because after you take that step out of the boat, it is required one thing: keep your eyes on the Lord, stand steady, And remember, He's leading you with His presence, not with pressure. He's not shaming you into making a decision. He's not shaming you into going somewhere. But on the other hand, He says, come on, follow me. I'll make you fishers of men. Follow me. I'll show you what needs to be done. I'll show you the way. I am the way. Follow me. Come to me. I'm right here. I'll show you how to rest. I'll show you how to depend on me. I'll show you how to trust even in difficult times, during moments of pressure. Often trust is going to be revealed. Who are you trusting while you are under pressure? Oh gosh, there's so much to remember while we read these verses. It was difficult for Joshua. He had to step into a place of leadership. He went from asking for miracles to survive to going into a place of leadership. And now he realizes that he has to follow the presence, he has to follow the Lord. And as the Lord is leading him, then he can lead others. And then finally, the third reminder is not only that in moments like this, we must embrace God's presence because that's how He leads us. Not only is it required, obedience requires for you to stand still, for you to stay put, to stand firm, but also now it is required that you can build a memorial. Joshua said, take 12 men, bring them here, let each of them bring a stone from all the tribes, and we will build a memorial, a place where we will remember what God did. I'm sure that there's so much that God has done in your life. I'm sure there's so much to remember. I'm sure you have history with God. So, a great reminder is to go back to those things that God has done in your life and honor that. Honor that victory. Honor that history. Honor that moment of breakthrough because that allows God, gives God an opportunity to actually lead you into the promised land, to do His work in you, to set you up for the promotion, to set you up for what He has prepared. But while you remember the Lord, while you remember what He's done, that's going to be fuel to your soul. That's going to be faith in the middle of darkness. That's going to be clarity in moments of uncertainty. That's going to be rest and peace in moments of high tension. Remembering what God has done. When you are able to make memory of what the Lord has done, that turns circumstances around. And Joshua said, you know what? We are building a memorial here because we will remember that God is able. I ask you today, are there things in your life that are great moments that you could remember that perhaps you've totally forgotten? Is there history that you have with the Lord that today might be a great opportunity for you to honor that, for you to remember that? What miracle has He done that you've forgotten to make mention of it to your kids, perhaps, to your friends, maybe to your family members? And in doing so, you are honoring God and you are honoring who He is for you. Another question, perhaps, that could help you while you reflect on these reminders. Another question could be, is there a place in my life where God has asked me to stay put, but I'm trying to rush the outcome? Is there a place that God has asked me to stand firm, but I keep on trying to just make things happen and try to produce results? I'm performing, I'm striving when God has called me simply to stay put, and He's more than able to do what He said He'll do. And then finally, is there anything in my life that is adding pressure to me? Am I being led by pressure instead of being led by presence in certain areas in my life. Today could be a good moment, my friend, that you could say, you know what? Uh, Let me pause. Let me pause and see where am I making decisions from pressure instead of presence. These are some of the things that we talk, some of the conversations that we have during our live editions of Faith Collective on Sundays. I enjoy reflecting on these kind of topics, on these kind of subjects, because they put you to think, what am I making decisions from? Have I forgotten to honor the history that I have with the Lord in certain areas? And when we reflect on these, man, they do something to us. These reminders, these moments, they fuel faith in our lives, in our spirits. They get us going, they get us moving. And that is my desire, my friend, that today, as you hang for these few minutes here with me, you could be motivated, you could be inspired, and you could be reminded of the history that you have with God. And you could embrace once again God's presence, be led by it instead of being led by pressure. And eventually, that you could get to a place you say, you know what, Frank, nothing is going to move me. I'm staying put right here. I just took a step of faith. Now I know I'm in between that step and my miracle and my promised land. I am in between that step and what God has promised, but I'm staying put here. I'm standing firm here, and I'm going to watch God cross his whole nation, my whole family, all my kids. I'm going to watch God do something spectacular in my business, in my finances, in my call, in my purpose. I'm going to watch God lead me to dive deeper into that purpose as I'm reminded what truly matters. I am so happy that you've been here with me for a few minutes. I would love to take a moment and just pray for you, because some of you might be standing right in the middle. So, Father, I pray today for my friends that are watching, that particularly those who are standing in the middle, those who took a step of faith, who made a decision, trust in you, and now they are in between that decision and their promised land. Father, I pray for grace to stand, for new strength to come on their lives, for faith to be fueled in their spirits, for faith to flourish again. Father, and in the face of fear, while fear watches, they will take a stand and they will experience great victories and great breakthroughs in your name, Lord. I pray now for those who are leaning into a moment of presence, stewarding God's presence in their lives, their marriages, their families, their business. And Father, as they do so, they will definitely get to see your goodness in the land of the living. They will get to see your goodness in the middle of their business, in the middle of their community, as they steward your presence. And finally, Father, that they will say, you know what? Let's build a memorial. Let's build a place here where we could remember what God has done. And let's make memory and honor what God has done in the past, because he's definitely able to do great things again and to do great things right now in our lives as we stand here in the middle. My friend, thank you very much. Join me Sunday for our live editions of Faith Collective. Invite someone, share this with someone, send this link to someone who needs to perhaps hear a message today that could fuel faith in their spirits. Feel free to make a donation as well to the ministry if you want to partner with us with what God is doing with us here. And I would love to see you on Sundays, and I would love to see you connecting with us in the next video as well. Thank you very much for watching.